Good afternoon, everyone. You can all hear me right from the back. Welcome to the last session of the afternoon, as Laura mentioned there. We're going to talk about digitalization. The 5G wave accelerates the future. So a big warm welcome to you all, ladies and gentlemen. The increasing use of technology and the adoption of technological tools has given rise to new sources of opportunity to deliver on the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The pandemic has not only forced companies, policymakers and governments to reconfigure their operations, but it's also given them an opportunity to reposition themselves to help them to move positively forward. Despite a difficult business climate, innovation remains the driving force behind the advancement of humanity and the acceleration of global flow of goods. And 5G infrastructure has certainly provided a lifeline for survival to many, for both individuals, companies, and is now regarded by some as the only pathway forward in a digitalized and hyper-connected world. 5G has been misperceived as a technology that's only capable of supporting faster communication and data downloads, but in reality, 5G has the ability to unlock the future of digitalization, specifically when it comes to the creation of wireless factories. 5G technology, it has the ability to revolutionize how products are manufactured, and in conjunction with the Internet of Things can connect every part of the manufacturing process, both within and outside the factory, leading to improved customer experiences and increased productivity. And with the uptake of 5G connections, both companies and policymakers are now prioritizing the need to identify international cooperation opportunities to achieve sustainable economic growth and to make progress towards SDGs in the area of climate action. Therefore, policymakers are working to establish procedures that will ensure inclusivity of the developing world when it comes to the implementation of 5G. And it's recognized to have the power to transform and revolutionize a wide range of industries, be that healthcare, smart cities, manufacturing, etc., etc. So we can all acknowledge that the economics of providing high-speed mobile broadband services remain challenging, and developing countries are not necessarily burdened by the legacy infrastructure. So if adequately planned, they can ensure their network investments pave the way for a smooth transition to 5G. And during this session, with these fantastic panelists, we're aiming to explore the various ways in which companies, governments, policymakers are approaching technological change driven by 5G technology, how it's integral to transforming society, the economy and the environment, as well as shaping a path towards global good. So, to help me, here's my panel. You can see everyone sitting comfortably there. We'll start with Tariq Al-Awadi, Executive Director, Spectrum Affairs Department, TRA, UAE. Really lovely to have you on the panel. Important that we're here, that we have your voice. Dr. Stephen Walker, VP and CTO, Lockheed Martin. Mohammed Kandi, who is virtual, I believe, Vice Chair and Global Advisory Leader, PwC USA. Hello, Mohammed.
Hello.
Ankur Ban, I can see you there, Mohammed. Finally, Founder and Head, Nokia Wing. And Asa, did I pronounce that right?
Hello.
I've been practicing. Tamson, Senior Vice President, Head of Business Area Technologies and New Business, Ericsson. Thank you all for joining us. Now, I'll take a seat now. Of course, I'd like to hear all your initial thoughts. So I will start with you, Tariq, if you don't mind. If you could give your initial thoughts on this discussion.
Thank you very much, Nadira. First, it's my pleasure to be here with you, and is my voice clear? Yes. Very good session here, talking about the 5G wave accelerating and how to be used here for industry. And just a few minutes ago, we have heard good remarks from Etisalat, Mr. Khalifa Shamsi, talking about the 5G and how we have reached here in the UAE. So I'm going to take you also a small journey on how we started here, the 5G in the UAE. Especially not only for 5G, even with all about IMT, which we call it International Mobile Telecommunication, known also as cellular services. So these all previous generation, first generation, second, third, and fourth generation. However, the TDRA took a role as a leading with the 5G, starting by late 2015-16, when we started the first demo of 5G. And then we start developing a strategy for how to move very quick with the 5G between 2017 to 2020. And fortunately, we could manage to assign frequencies for trials with the two operators that we are having here and many times, and with aiming that to have in this Expo 2020 full 5G services. What we reached also by 2018, in May 2018, we have been the first country in the region and fourth globally country to introduce 5G commercially for individual and industry all. And after the US, Korea, South Korea, and China, UAE was the fourth country in the world launching the 5G commercially. So we have assigned a number of frequency band for our operators. You can say that around 2,500 megahertz, which is the essential thing for the 5G to start it. And we have managed by that to become #1 globally as mobile penetration, first country or #1 country in the worldwide in terms of indicators of mobile penetration. And the number of stations that we have managed to install here in the UAE in 1 year, in the third quarter of 2020, it was around 2,700. Similar, and after 1 year, in the third quarter of 2020, it doubles around 5,200 base station for 5G all over the UAE. And right now we have reached with the coverage for the coverage, around 85% in the populated main cities of the UAE of the 5G. So that you can see in the UAE that we are already trying to bring these new technologies. And as a TDRA, as a regulator in the country, we are facilitating and supporting our industry, the mobile operator and mobile industry to bring these kind of technologies. Of course, it is still in the beginning. We need to work a lot in order to get benefit of this 5G with the different use cases. And that is also another strategy we have developed. That is strategy for 2020-2025. This strategy is a roadmap for a UAE on how to accelerate introducing the 5G with different use cases, which will come through it during the discussion later on. We'll show you on how those use cases with different entities, with all mobile industry and operator work together in order to reach to our target, that to be by 2025 all over UAE with 100% of coverage, and also with high capacity with low latency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Stephen Walker, I think we'll move on to you with your initial thoughts.
Sure. Happy to be here, my first time in the UAE. Thank you for the invitation. I'm here, Lockheed Martin. We're looking at 5G and applications of 5G for some very different applications. Looking at, as we look at peer adversaries in the world and how to secure our nations and the nations of our allies, we're focused on a concept called joint all-domain operations, which is really about taking the physical domains, air, land, sea, space, the non-physical domains, cyberspace, and building a deterrent capability across all those domains that can be adaptive, surprising, and agile to our peer adversaries. And so to do that, we need a resilient communication system. to pass that information from one domain to the next and do it securely and with low latency and high bandwidth to take advantage of all of the different technologies like AI and machine learning, edge computing that are out there today. So that is our primary interest in. We're developing something called 5G.mil, which we've trademarked. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later and what that concept's all about.
Thank you, Stephen. Mohammed.
Yes, thank you very much for having me virtually, and it's great to be on this panel today. In addition to the remarks that were made earlier, I think we can all acknowledge that the COVID-19 pandemic has really accelerated what we call in the private sector digital transformation, how companies are being run today. And it has put a lot of pressure on companies to think about being resilient, how to stay competitive, but also how to create more connected experiences for their customers. That's really where we at PwC come to work with many of these companies around the world. And 5G is a great enabler of how companies can think about the future of the products that they have to offer, how to deal with the customers. But I think one angle that we're always exploring with many companies around the world is, even though we have a lot of opportunities with sensors, high-speed wireless, the Internet of Things, smart cities, there is a lot of data, a lot of information that is being generated when we connect all the different devices and when we connect even more people. In addition to connectivity, the currency of 5G is actually data and what to do with that data. And most importantly, that data needs to be secure, it needs to be protected. So trust is a must when it comes to 5G, for 5G to be adopted even more globally. Back to you, Najira.
Thank you, Mohammed. Ankur.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here on this panel. My name is Ankur Bhan. I head the worldwide IoT network grid at Nokia, which is really looking at simplifying and accelerating IoT across multiple industries. And literally 5G is the enabling technology, behind IoT. So we really see IoT is sort of a key enabler for multiple industries to accelerate the digital transformation. We see in the world several challenges. We're just beginning to come out of a global pandemic. We are seeing, the planet is already under pressure. We still see inequality being a key issue that needs to be addressed. And we see, our digital transformation really as a central solution across many of the challenges. 5G and also associated technologies such as AI, ML, blockchain, cloud and edge computing really play a key role in enabling this digital transformation, which will really address many of these challenges that we see across the globe. And at Nokia, we have a mission for the world to act together and for us to really provide the technology to do so. So look forward to the discussions and share my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankur. Last but not least, Asa, please.
Well, first of all, really nice to be here with all of you, and I really enjoy being here in UAE. I think, well, first of all, I'm heading up business technologies and new businesses at Ericsson. That's basically a portfolio of businesses targeting Ericsson's new growth into enterprise, leveraging IoT and 5G. Spans from IoT platform to dedicated networks to wireless WAN edge solutions. And the reason why we're very excited about, frankly, what's going on right now, both with 5G, but also with other emerging technologies, is you've seen that smarter connected industries can both advance companies, really spearhead their competitiveness, but I think importantly, spearhead industries. And I think we learned more recently in the context of climate change, we actually need them if we're going to meet the CO2 emission reduction gap. So, and those developments goes hand in hand, and that's the joint opportunity. That I think is really exciting. It frankly makes it very meaningful to work in this industry right now. But also if you look at Ericsson, we've been through quite the transformation journey over the last couple of years, and we have a clear mission and vision where we said we want to use limitless connectivity. We want to create connections where we can help improve people's lives, we can redefine businesses, which we talk a lot about here at GMIS, but also pioneer a more sustainable future. I think that's, at the end of the day, why we're here. I'm very excited to see all the stakeholders convening here, and also after quite a long period for all of us during the pandemic.
Thank you. Thank you all for your initial thoughts. Tariq, I'll start with you now for our question and answer and discussion that we've got a little bit of time to use now. You mentioned the region, of course, and bringing in new technologies, and you touched on a little bit about how we look into the future. What will the 5G industrial ecosystem look like in 2025, in your opinion?
Thank you very much for this question. First, let's see what 5G would provide. The 5G will provide very low latency. Also, there will be bigger benefit for massive machine communication type, and enhancing mobile broadband. So now, where this will be required, it will be used, of course, in manufacturing requirements, smart cities, mining, ports, entertainment, utilities, transportation. All those require these things with low latency, with massive communication, enhanced broadband, and capacity required. So we see that the 5G will be in the future, will use in those all use cases. And also, one of the things that we have seen in our studies, as per the ITU, which we are following all the time there, that the industry digitalization revenue for players will increase by the cumulative annual growth revenue rate by 12% in 2025 or 2025. And of course, the 5G will enable that one, and the increase also with the revenue with the mobile industry or service provider will be increasing by $35 billion in that time. So we can see that the 5G will play a very important role in order to enable those all use cases to work together and how to get benefit from these new technologies.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Stephen Walker, you talked about needing a resilience in a communication system, and security is obviously one of the absolute key issues. I'm interested to look at the world militaries, actually, and why do world militaries care about 5G technology, and what benefits does it provide?
Sure. Well, I think it's, we're obviously looking at it for use in factories to reduce cost and increase efficiency, like many companies. But I mentioned the joint all-domain operations sort of architecture that we're thinking about, and the requirement to share lots of data between domains quickly and with low latency. 5G obviously brings a lot of advantages there if we can make it secure, if we can bring it with us, because we're going to be operating in areas of the world that don't necessarily have 5G. So bringing 5G with us in a UAV architecture potentially, or even to space and back to the continental United States, are all sort of architectures we're looking at and experimenting with today. And so we're working with, we're not a telecom company like some of my colleagues here, so we are working with commercial companies in that space. We announced a partnership with Verizon recently to look at developing what we call hybrid base stations, because one of the things, again, that we can't just rely on 5G. We have lots of old data links, old data networks that our systems use today. Even our Air Force and Navy use different systems, and so what we're trying to do is develop a hybrid base station that can then feed 5G in, as well as all these advanced tactical data links. We don't want to replace all the radios on our platforms, and so how do we how do we do that integration of these various data links than a hybrid base station? So that's one of the things we're working with Verizon on right now. So there are lots of, I guess I would say, interesting things that you've got to bring along with all the capabilities of 5G to make it useful to a military.
Thank you. Now, Mohammed, I'd like to bring you into the conversation now. And based on your work with PwC clients, how do you anticipate 5G will impact the organization's ability to implement those new technologies or generate more value from technologies that are already being used, for example, AI?
Thanks for the question, Adira. So for many of the companies that we work with, 5G is actually a means to an end. The end is adopting technology to do principally two things: changing the way they work and how they run their operations. And second, also how to make decisions. So we are finding out that 5G is an enabler for many companies to accelerate the adoption of many of the use cases that we just heard about. Robotics, we talked about the Internet of Things, sensor technology to better run organizations, etc. But we're also seeing that 5G is also going to accelerate the adoption of artificial intelligence, because again, when you think about 5G, all the different connected devices and connected people, a lot of information is being generated, and there is no artificial intelligence with that data. So we are seeing that artificial intelligence as a technology is going to be adopted even faster than before. And for many companies, it is great because their data and analytics, analyzing that data for them to think about how to make decisions, how to run the business differently, how to think about having not only insights, but also foresights. We are seeing a lot of companies adopting artificial intelligence even faster, especially when it's powered by 5G. Lastly, it's an explosion of the cloud because all of this data has to go somewhere. It has to be stored somewhere so it can be analyzed. So cloud technology, artificial intelligence, a lot of robotics and Internet of Things are all technologies that companies are looking to adopt even faster, and all enabled by 5G today.
Thank you, Mohammed. Ankur, I'm going to ask you now about the digital transformation discussion is today on every country's and company's agenda, obviously. And in your experience, which emerging technologies will be critical drivers for ushering in digital transformation, and how should you use them for the most benefit?
Absolutely. I think there's a very little doubt about that digital transformation delivers value, and we have seen companies in various industries disrupting the existing competitive landscape, leveraging these digital technologies, be it Amazon, what they've done with the e-commerce, or be it Tesla, what they've done with the automotive industry. And these companies are very successful in using the digital technologies to fundamentally alter the value proposition towards the customers. And we see a big potential for many, what I would call as a physical industries, to also leverage 5G and other combinatorial technologies. And I use the term 5G plus, things like 5G, edge computing, AI and ML, and enabling trustworthiness using blockchain, and really using these technologies to fundamentally alter the value proposition in many of these physical heavy industries. I think as an industry, we also need to, in my view, focus less on technology, because I think the technologies, of course, are there and they would deliver on the individual promises, each of these technologies. But I think more discussion needs to be had on the business problem that is being addressed, and what value proposition gets addressed. Because we are in the world now, we see these technologies, and in future we will, the technology evolution will not stop. After 5G, we will see 6G, we will see quantum computing, we will see materials like graphene or nanorobotics, and these things will keep on coming. But what we need to really put focus on, how do we really drive the efficiency and productivity, safety, sustainability, and all of these levers in various industries. And I think 5G is still quite a fundamental enabler, as without connectivity, many of these technologies cannot really work together.
Asa, similar question to you, I suppose. Global good activities within corporations were typically, they were considered a corporate social responsibility activity that were merely nice to have and generated good publicity. But we're now witnessing a mindset shift, aren't we, really, towards looking at global good initiatives as a corporate survival tool. How is your organization taking on global good initiatives for its survival, and are you able to give any examples of that?
Well, thank you. I think, first of all, I think we've gone through a shift where the tech for good was charity work. I think now it's a necessity for all of us, and I think it's not an either or. I think what is exciting, if you take what Ankur mentioned about using digital capabilities to improve the customer experience and improve value propositions, now you can do that and also have a more sustainable business. And I think those who will lead going forward are those who can do both those things. If we look at Ericsson, we have put our vision and purpose at the center of that. We want to, of course, bring a healthy business. That's required if you want to continue to invest into new solutions and new technologies and new businesses. But we also want to really have a fundamental positive impact on people's life. We want to redefine how we can operate as businesses, and we want to pioneer that sustainable future. So what does that mean for us? Well, I mean, first of all, for the sake of trust and credibility, we start with ourselves. So we have, over the last 6 years, reduced our emissions by 50% as a company. We're committed now to be net zero by 2030. I was the other day with our 250 top suppliers. We asked them to put the same ambition. So you can say in that sense, it's walk the talk. And that continues. The Ericsson radio system we will launch next year is on track to be 35% more energy efficient than the previous generation. But it also comes back to business travel. Very exciting to be here. We've been missing that for some time, but we think we can probably leverage the mix of physical and virtual meetings better than we did pre-pandemic. And next year, we think we can reduce travel by 50%. So that's a couple of examples. We also launched during the pandemic our first 5G factory in Louisville, Texas, in the US. And it's one where it's 100% built on renewables, using rainwater. So we actually reduced the indoor water consumption by 75%. The energy consumption overall by 25%, and we, over the last 12 months, scaled 25 Industry 4.0 use cases. So I think, again, it shows bringing those solutions, leveraging the latest technology, goes hand in hand. And we'll continue to do that. We started 10 years ago by starting developing the 5G technology, which was really based on the needs that enterprise saw that the needs were not fulfilled on security, on latency, and we started with that then. Now it's all about developing the ecosystem, the partnership to make sure the applications of 5G can actually be used. And that will not happen with Ericsson alone. It will not happen with any one of us alone. We have to collaborate, and I think that's also why you may have seen that today we also announced our intent to acquire Vonage, which is one of the world's leading communication platform providers with an developer ecosystem of 1 million developers. That's just another step in line with our strategy to make sure we can create an open innovation system for enterprises, for operator, for developers to benefit of all the capabilities of 5G.
Thank you, Asa. Now, Tariq, I'll come back to you and talk about the role that can be played by governments and the regulators for accelerating 5G.
That is a very good question. In order how to move very fast with the 5G, the regulator or the government, they can play a big role by rolling out the 5G as quickly as possible. In order to do that, it requires to do a number of things. First of all, to assign radio frequency spectrum, sufficient bandwidth, to telecom operators. And this spectrum has to be also regionally, or at least regionally or globally harmonized. I mean, harmonized has to be approved with the ITU, which we are doing with that one, ITU, WRC, World Telecommunication Conference, to allocate sufficient and enough frequency bandwidth for mobile services. And of course, later on, the countries or the regulators has to assign those frequencies to the operators. Second, we have to have standards for the devices. That is important. We need to see it. Certification of devices also it's required. And also required to develop some regulatory instruments. And now when we talk about regulatory instruments, that is a regulation in order how to use this technology. Not only regulations by the regulators, by the use cases also. For example, if we go to the transportation, of course, we will assign frequency that the telecom operator, maybe they will deploy the network and device there, but what kind of regulation is required in order to have this transportation or vehicles to move forward, to move in those area, and how to control it. This is also required, important by those use cases. And of course, in order to do that one, and we are using this very magic word here, has to be a collaboration. A collaboration between the government, regulators, between the telecom operators, between the mobile industry, the vendors, and between the use cases, the entities who can use it. Those like education, healthcare, smart cities, all those has to work together. And we, in order to do that one as a collaboration in UAE also, we are working to develop a cluster or working groups for different use cases. And we'll bring all those entities, all those mobile industry, mobile operators, telecom operators in the UAE, the regulator and the use cases, and of course the manufacturer also for use cases, and come to sit together and collaborate and to see where their requirement, what is their requirement, and how we can move forward very fast, which frequency band required, what is the latency or capacity required. These things can be done with the collaboration. And of course, we are encouraging also the mobile industry or mobile operators to go to the use cases, to the entities, to provide the services to them, and do some trials. Today we have here, just right now before our session, the telecom operators already, they are going to those use cases, doing some trials, showing them the benefit with the 5G and how can be using it. All those required to work together, and the government has to push on that one. In UAE, that's what we are doing. We are not just assigning the frequency and let the operators go by themselves. No, we are going and bringing those all entities, the government entities, the private entities, let them sit to the operators, see their needs, and listen to other requirements and try to develop it. So this is what we are encouraging as a regulator. We are doing it in order to move and accelerate the 5G. Of course, we have not to forget also one important thing, the international organization like ITU, like 3GPP, where the standards coming there. We need to see their standards and we need to work together. Harmonization is very important. Harmonization, it will help for ecosystem, for deploying the network very easy with low cost.
So, you've stressed the collaboration, yes, the requirement for collaboration, and Dr. Stephen Walker, I'd like to come to you. There is criticism about the defense industry. Some people saying that traditional defense industry is too slow and unable to innovate. Is that due to a lack of collaboration, do you think? What are the reasons for that?
I think there can be lots of reasons. I think one, the products we make, people's lives are at stake, right? We have to get that right. And so we do have a very rigorous engineering process, I would say, at Lockheed Martin that ensures our products work the first time. Our men and women, servicemen and women, operate those platforms and vehicles, and they need to remain safe. So there is a certain rigor, but I would say we're changing. I think Lockheed Martin has what we call a 21st century technology framework now. We are focused on many of the technologies my colleagues have already talked about here, 5G, .mil, but also AI and machine learning, edge compute, autonomy and manned-unmanned teaming, even engineered biology, believe it or not. So we have a list of about 14 areas we're focused on where we think these technologies are going to be incredibly important to Internet of Things and all the various architectures I've already talked about. I think a key, Nadira, for us is tapping into the commercial sector. You know, at least in the U.S., the commercial research and development is 2/3 of the overall R&D in the United States. And so we have very much part of our tech strategy is to partner with commercial companies. And you'll see us doing that. Back to sustainability or you know, what we're doing for climate change at Lockheed Martin is we actually have a program now with NVIDIA where we're looking at fighting forest fires and bringing our defense technology, combining with NVIDIA's AI and machine learning tech, and applying that to a problem that many of us face around the world due to climate change. And so what can AI and machine learning help us do to solve that problem? With the assets we have in space, in the air, the machines being able to manage all of that and understand predict where the fire front is going to be and put the fire out. And so it's just an example of how we're reaching out to the commercial world, and I think getting more innovative and faster because of it.
Thank you. We haven't got that long left in our session. We could talk for hours, couldn't we? Mohammed, I'm going to come back to you. And Ankur mentioned the, technology evolution will not stop, and inequalities, and we've all witnessed supply chain disruptions all over the world, haven't we? What role do you see 5G playing to help organizations build a more resilient supply chain, more resilient supply chains, and better adapt to issues?
Thanks, Nadira. There are actually two sides to that question, because when you think about 5G, especially for one specific sector, which is on semiconductors, 5G is actually adding to the demand that is creating some of the shortages today. When you think about 5G antennas, they use laminates that is very critical for the production of semiconductors. Think about 5G radios, sensors, connected devices. So the more we have the adoption of 5G, the more we are seeing that some of an industry like the semiconductor industry is going to be even more stressed because of the additional demand that we are seeing in that industry. So that's one part of the answer. The second part is absolutely 5G, because we have the ability to get real-time information. We can get the information faster. 5G would allow companies to manage supply chain in a much more efficient way. Less inventory, making sure that they can do better supply and demand forecasting when it comes to production, less waste, and they have real-time visibility into the supply chain, into logistics. So absolutely, 5G is going to be a big enabler to ensure that the supply chains of the future can be even more efficient than they are today. And we need to, because as we see the additional demand because of the different countries, more demand coming from consumers, when we know that it is only the beginning when it comes to the need to have very efficient supply chains by leveraging 5G.
Thank you. Okay, I think it's time to hear, after you've heard everybody's points of view, your final thoughts, actually. And I'd like to start with you, Tariq, if you will.
Well, thank you very much. With regard to the 5G, we have to see which, as a regulator, there is a question for us as a regulator, which path we have to move forward with the 5G. As a private network, as a traditional telecom, or unlicensed. That is important things for as a regulator, as a government, we have to see how to move forward in order to have a good 5G network in the country. And this is a big question going on right now with us as a regulator, to be honest, because worldwide right now, there is a traditional move. But the 5G will be provided by the telecom operator. They will give slicing to the use cases. But there is a request also coming that there should be a private network, which is also we have to study it. Right now, as a person myself, I have some resistance to go with the private network because it's not easy. Because our telecom operator, they are investing a lot on that one, and we have to see this success of the 5G. Private network, what will add? But we have to see also there is a demand because we have different requirement. Maybe the traditional telecom operator cannot provide it. We have to study it. Unlicensed, also one of the things is coming. We can see it in many countries also talking about, especially when we talk about IoT and others. And those things, it is not something easy for us as a regulator to decide it very quick. We need to study it. We need to see what will be the benefit for the country and how to get benefit of the 5G for long term, especially with the fourth industrial revolution, with the revolution, with the IoTs, with different technologies coming, and how this 5G can help us. So this is one of the things that we need to see it as a regulator on future, how to license the 5G. Although that we started, but we need to see how to move forward.
Thank you. Dr. Stephen Walker.
I guess I would just add that I think collaboration is really, really important in this area, and it's not going to happen with just a defense company or a commercial company or a government agency. It's going to require all of us working together. The standards was mentioned. I think it's really, really important, and I think working together to keep it as open as possible is going to be extremely important, especially for developing countries as they're coming along to participate.
Thank you. Mohammed.
So one of the things that I'm really intrigued and interested by is the path forward with 5G, the creation of value. I know that we talk a lot about 5G as a way to do what we do today, how we run manufacturing, how we run companies in a very different way to be more efficient. But what's interesting and intriguing is going to be what new companies are going to be created in the future because of 5G. Companies that do not exist today. This is all about innovation. What is the next generation of jobs that can be created because of 5G? So the value creation of 5G, not only to make today very efficient, but to create the new things for tomorrow. That's a part that I believe is very intriguing when it comes to 5G. It is just the beginning, but we truly believe that 5G is going to add and create much more value in many different countries, not for the companies that exist today, but for the new companies that will be created in the future.
Thank you. Asa.
So I think a lot of important things already been said, but one reflection I have, the standard is here, the technology is here. We now rolled out 5G in numerous countries in the world. And we predict that in 2026, 60% of the world population will be covered by 5G. So UAE is clearly ahead. But I think it will not happen. It will not happen by itself. Technology in itself will not solve it. And I agree, collaboration is important. But I think we need to also take the collaboration from discussions to actually doing. Mm-hmm. And I think this is where we've seen some quite exciting results. If I just look inward at Ericsson, we also have our challenges when we're trying to transform our company. But we basically show that we could actually launch 25 use cases in a year in our own factory. And yes, that requires sourcing, IT, all the things we're all struggling with, and 40 technology partners, a lot of collaboration to pull that off. Same thing, we have a customer in Australia who brought 5G and Microsoft HoloLens to the construction site. And you know what? All of a sudden you have a digital twins, architects can talk about with the construction workers, you can see safety issues before they happen, you can see supply chain issues before they happen, and you can actually reduce the lead time and increase the safety. And last week, my team was in Germany, met one of the leading automotive OEM manufacturers, and they started exploring the technology, but then realized now they hit the capacity roof with their autonomous guided vehicles and said, we need 5G to take the next step in scalability. We all know this, we hear this, but I think we need to start to experience, learn from it, and scale it from there.
Thank you. Ankur.
Yeah, I think just to add on that, I think we all seem to agree that there's a huge potential in 5G as a technology, to drive the transformative effects in various industries. There are several examples being already quoted, in the panel. So I think that's really established. What is really critical now is, how do we really accelerate and scale? And I think there, what you said, collaboration, but also, collective action, and us to be really bold in our aspirations as well. I think if I look at 5G and the other technologies, I think these technologies, coupled with changes in the organizational processes, really would drive the next wave of driving the levels of productivity, the efficiency, the sustainability, which is so important for, I would say, a collective survival for us. So I think being bold and collective action would be my sort of a reflection and key takeaway.
I like that a lot, being bold and collaborate. I think those are the two key words. Well done, Ankur, to that. Fantastic discussion, I'm sure you'll agree. It's been really very insightful and extremely important, I think, to be able to discuss these issues on a global level, and this is what GMIS is all about, certainly to help us progress and create a better future for all. A huge thank you to all of my guests, to Tariq Al-Awadi, Executive Director, Spectrum Affairs Department, TRA UAE, Dr. Stephen Walker, VP and CTO, Lockheed Martin, Mohammed Kandi, virtually there, Vice Chair and Global Advisory Leader, PwC USA, Ankur Ban, Founder and Head, Nokia Wing, and of course, Asa Tamson, Senior Vice President and Head of Business Area Technologies and New Businesses, Ericsson. Thank you all very much. I think a big round of applause to everyone, for all our speakers. It's been also a privilege for me to moderate for you today. I'm Nadira Tudor, and thank you all for watching. Thank you.